There he
Everybody.
is. Okay. Hello, Tuly.
Hi. Let me
With
do.
Tuly, we have a little glitch. You guys sent out something, I think, automatically last night that said that we weren't starting until 2 a.m. your time.
Oh,
Um, and it's a link that does not work. So I posted the original link for the original time, but that link brings everybody's name up as Paul Lagno. So you have to fire Rami Goldberg after this meeting and
that
try to
is
get
like
somebody else
my.
to.
That's kind of like my dream come true. To be surrounded by dozens of Paul Lagnos.
Yeah, I know.
No, you missed the experience when we first started, Tully. That's what it was. I got on, and everybody's name was Paul Lagno. I mean, the
Wow.
world would be.
Okay.
Think about what kind of world we would have if we just had a world full of Paul Lagnos. I mean, it would be the kindest, sweetest place that we could have.
Oh boy. Okay. I am going to say a quick prayer, Tuli, and then we're going to start. And I just want to say thank you very much for allowing us to be with you at this meeting and to uh, discover some more about universal Zionism. Remy, do you know how to mute everybody? Because I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I'll take care of it.
Okay, thank you. Um, and so uh, we're excited about this book. Several of us I know have gotten it and read it, and we're very, very excited to hear from the horse's mouth this morning. So I'll just say a quick prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we bow in thy beloved presence to thank you so much for this meeting. Thank you so much for our brethren in Israel that we have contact with, that you would give them your wisdom, give them your spirit now. And we long for the time of the Messianic kingdom to come. And we pray your special blessing with us now in the name of Mashiach. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. Paul, thank you so much. I do want to say just thank you for arranging this, and we are really grateful that we are able to work with the Bible students and have this opportunity. Hopefully, the first of many opportunities to study together and to learn together. So, on behalf of Israel 365, on behalf of the Jewish people, I'd just like to say a thank you to you for taking the time and the passion and your energy and really putting it towards God's work.
Amen. Thank you so much. Just for the brethren's sake to know, we've known Rabbi Tuly since before he decided to make Aliyah. When he announced that, we were just overjoyed because we knew from meeting with him in Columbus, Ohio, that his impact on Israel would be tremendous. And we have not been wrong about that. Israel 365 just celebrated, I think, your 13th or 14th year um, in existence. Um, and they have made a huge impact on the Christian world and the Israeli world. And so you're going to learn all about that now. And Tuli, it's so excited to introduce you over.
Well, thank you very much, Paul, a dear friend. Thank you, Rabbi Rami, who was so excited to set this up. And if you don't know Rabbi Rami, everyone should make sure to get to know him. He is the main person who interacts with, is the bridge between so many of us on the Israel side, on the Jewish side, and then you on the Christian side, and wherever you are in the States or anywhere in the world. Rabbi Rami is that bridge, and he's your conduit. So please get to know him. And then of course to Paul and to Joyce, I want to thank you. This is not my first time speaking to Bible students, and so it is an honor to be with all of you and to share the Bible. Really, is something that we have in common, Jews and Christians, and I don't think there's any group of Christians that are more committed to the Bible study and to be students of the Bible than, of course, the Bible students. And that's what the Jewish people really are always striving to be, and we're always aspiring to be. In Hebrew, we say like the highest compliment that you could give a person is that he is a Talmid Chacham. He is a wise student. He's a wise Bible student. And so I don't know, Paul, if you even knew that, but that's the highest compliment you can make to a Jewish person, is that he is a Bible student. So to be with all of you, and I know that you take your studies very seriously. It's a privilege. We just finished Shabbat here in Israel. So still coming off of that, kind of holiness and that special time together with family and friends. So I'll share with you maybe a connection also to this week's Torah portion that we just finished reading. But if you're, where you are, it's still Shabbat. So we read about the exile, the Exodus, or the Exodus from Egypt, and the 10 plagues that Moses and Aaron bring onto Pharaoh, where they go from slavery to freedom. And there's definitely stages in that redemption of Israel at the time. And, they don't immediately, Moses doesn't come onto the scene and say, let my people go. And Pharaoh say, okay, fine. What do you need? How can I help? There's a lot of ups and downs, and there's 10 plagues. And then, so there's sort of this transition that has to happen in order for to go from slavery to freedom, or to go to liberation and redemption. There are stages along the way. And what we believe is that everything that happens in the Bible is a precursor and a harbinger of the future redemption of Israel and the world. Okay, that's an important concept when reading the Bible, is that you have to read it at face value. Okay, but also there are deeper messages and lessons throughout. Right. So one of the main messages and lessons throughout the Bible is that there will be a redemption of the world, and that is something that for most of our history seemed kind of mythical, or at least required a lot of faith to believe in. But we're very fortunate, each and every one of us, to be living in a time where the end of days scenario and those sections of the Bible are not mythical, they're literal. And things that seemed very far-fetched have been coming true and are coming true in front of our very eyes. And that, of course, the biggest miracle ever since the time of the Bible is the restoration of the people of Israel to the land of Israel. That's something that the Bible predicted and wrote about extensively and repeatedly. And it seemed like a myth. It seemed like a legend. It seemed like maybe it was referring to somebody else, right? But no, in fact, right, it was a literal fulfillment that we have seen in our own generation, in our own era. And that's a tremendous thing that we're in the middle of right now. We're all still in the middle of. And however, it is something that, because we're so immersed in it and intertwined in the story of Israel, so sometimes we forget to take, like, maybe what we need to do is take a bird's eye view of what's really happening today. And that is what the book Universal Zionism is meant to be all about. So Universal Zionism was my effort to kind of come to grips with October 7th and the aftermath. And I, tried to formulate where I think we are in history, and specifically when it comes to, like, the restoration of Israel. Okay. And I wanted to try to lay that out for you here in a couple of minutes, and maybe take some questions from all of you. So please, if you have any questions, you could type them in the chat box. I'll try to speak now for maybe 10 minutes, and then break for some questions, okay? And we could go longer, but I don't want to speak for too long. I want to be able to make this interactive, okay? And also, and maybe Rabbi Rami, if you want to jump in at any point, you're also welcome to do that. But after October 7th, so Israel was attacked, and it was horrific, and we all know that. We all know what happened. Then the aftermath, which in some ways was even more shocking and surprising and devastating, was that the world turned on the Jews so quickly, and that the explosion of anti-Semitism happened. And, it was something that not that Israel was not prepared for the attack, and Israel was not prepared for the information attack, the propaganda war that was waged against Israel afterwards. And it's been very clarifying. On the one hand, many people who were staunch supporters of Israel for many years and even decades were nowhere to be found after October 7th, and started, in fact, supporting our enemies. And at the same time, have been many allies who have doubled down in their support of Israel, primarily the Christians like yourself, who have doubled down in their support of Israel. And we're very grateful for that. But the whole world seems to be upside down. And how do you make sense of where we're at in history right now? And the way that I see it is that we are, like in the 10 plagues, there are these transitions and stages of history, and especially when it comes to the redemption of Israel. And if you look back at the original redemption from Egypt, there were these stages. So too, everything that happens in biblical times is a harbinger for what's going to happen in the future. So too, in the future, or in the current redemption of Israel, it's going to happen in stages, with some ups and some downs. Okay. And so Universal Zionism is based on the notion that the Zionist movement, the political movement for the restoration of Israel and sovereignty of the Jewish people back in our ancestral homeland, started off in approximately 1896 with Theodor Herzl. And it was a political movement. It was a movement of nationalism, like there were many national movements at that time, especially in Europe. And the Jews were living in Europe at the time, so they were very much a part of that discussion and the conversation around national movements. And Herzl was the first one to say, well, if the Germans are going to have a national home, and if the French are going to have a home, and if the Bulgarians could have a home, then the Jews should have a home. And he put together the format and the playbook for the Jewish state. He wrote a book called The Jewish State. He got Jews very excited about it. Christians got very excited about it. And he was the founder of political Zionism. Okay. And at the time, Jews were moving to the land and building out the basic infrastructure, the roads, the water systems. They were draining the swamps, and they were doing all of those physical things that you needed in order to have a state in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the Middle East. And miraculously, 50 years from when he started, the state of Israel was founded in 1948. And you might have heard of the first prime minister, very famous, David Ben-Gurion. He was the first prime minister, also very, very secular of a Jew, didn't believe in God, for example, and was really, a nationalist and a political leader, but not in any way a religious or a spiritual leader. So that was the first stage of Zionism, that first phase from 1898 to 1948, those first 50 years. After that, so once the state was established, and what's interesting is that in the Declaration of Independence, Ben-Gurion got up there on a Friday afternoon in the Tel Aviv Museum, and he announced, I hereby declare a state of Israel to be a nation like all other nations. Okay. And that was the goal, to be a nation like every other nation. Because remember, they were secular political Jews. They weren't religious Jews. However, that transitioned into the second phase. The second phase was a more of a religious Zionism. Okay, and there were some rabbis, there were very important rabbis who developed a Jewish philosophy, or maybe a theology of religious Zionism that didn't really exist until the time. A famous rabbi, you can look him up later, Rabbi Kook, Kook. He developed this concept, and that we are not meant to be a nation like all other nations. We are meant to, in fact, be a nation unlike all other nations. We're meant to be in Israel because God made a covenant with the people, made a covenant with the land, and said that he wants his people there in the land. And he brought many examples from the Bible to prove his point. And Rabbi Kook started a revolution in the Jewish community. For the first time, Jews started to understand that returning to our homeland was a very significant part of the Jewish faith. And the modern return was a very significant milestone. And it led to a religious revival in the Jewish people. We are now starting to reconnect with the land that God gave to us, and he promised to Abraham, promised to Isaac, promised to Jacob. And so the second phase of Zionism was this religious Zionism. And it's something that, now you see so many people wearing a kippah on their head, even in the Knesset or in the Supreme Court or in the army. So many of the leadership of this country are people who think about God before they think about anything else. And so that's a tremendous thing. And that's, Rabbi Rami, myself, this is how we live our life as religious Zionists. We're people who are both, traditional observant Jews, but also very Zionist. And this blend of the political and the religious is something that have always grown up with. And that's a big part of the Jewish people today. Then October 7th happened. And October 7th was this wake up call that, wow, maybe, we're at a new crossroads. This religious Zionism seemed to perhaps have hit a dead end because, God gave us the land not to be negotiating it away with our enemies, not to be giving back to our enemies. That's not the purpose. The purpose of Israel is not, just to be a nation like all other nations, or even to be a place where Jewish people can worship and celebrate. It has a much bigger purpose. Zionism has a much bigger purpose than just to serve the Jewish people. And that I think has been the mistake of Israel over the last number of years, is that we were really looking to create sort of this almost like a ghetto in the Middle East where Jews could be safe from our enemies and have a place to live and to thrive as Jews, which we have achieved to a large extent. But the mission of Israel, both the people and the land, is so much bigger than that. And that is Universal Zionism. And Universal Zionism is the idea that we're here not to serve ourselves, we're here to serve the world. Israel is here to be a light unto the nations, and that even Zionism is meant to have as big, maybe even a bigger impact on a Christian from Kentucky as a Jew from Jerusalem. And so that's what my book is about, Universal Zionism. And it is not something that I made up. It's something that's very much built into the governance of the Bible. In the Bible, the governance of Israel started really with King Saul. He was the first king. Book of Samuel discusses Saul's life in his kingdom. And after Saul comes David, and after David comes Solomon. And those are like these three pivotal kings that, if you think about it, they're that kingdom, the first three kings, is the model for the Universal Zionism model, the three-part model that I just outlined. And again, everything that happens in the Bible is a precursor for what's going to happen in the future. And so if you think about who King Saul was somebody who, after hundreds of years of chaos with a period of the judges, Saul came about. He was able to unify the people under one kingdom, one government, right, which is incredible. And he not only did that, but he fought the enemies of Israel. He fought the Philistines and he fought Amalek. However, he was ultimately unsuccessful. He was not somebody who, when the ark was kidnapped from Saul, right, when they lost the battle and the Philistines took the ark, so Saul is not devastated by that. He moves on. It's not something that bothers him tremendously. He's not somebody who is always praying to God. He doesn't have that close relationship with God, so much so that when God tells him to destroy, your enemies and destroy Amalek, he doesn't actually fulfill God's direction. He actually doesn't do God's complete mandate. And because of that, his kingdom is stripped from him. But then after Saul, who in some ways is that first phase of political government, but after him, of course, was King David. King David was somebody who is always thinking about God, talking to God, praying to God, crying with God. Everything that he is focused on is God first. And when he defeats Goliath, he says that it is not through might, but it's through the name of the God of Israel. He's always talking about God, and he is very bothered by the loss of the ark. He makes sure to bring it back, and he dances ecstatically for the ark. And ultimately, he wants to build a temple for God. Right? That's King David. David is always focused on God. He brings the soul and the spirit into the body that was established by King Saul, and that was King David. But ultimately, as we know, David is unable to build the temple, although he wants to very much. God does not grant him that wish. He's unable to build a temple, and it's another generation. It's not the right time for there to be a temple. It's not the right period. There needs to be another sort of phase or transition. And that, of course, then becomes his son, Solomon. Solomon builds the temple. Solomon prays that the temple should be a house of prayer for all nations. Solomon is somebody whose wisdom attracts neighbors and kings and queens from the entire world, certainly the entire region. They all come to Jerusalem to benefit from Solomon's wisdom. And he is somebody who is very focused on spreading the knowledge of God, the God of Israel, outwards, outbound. And he marries hundreds, right? 300 wives and 700 concubines. He has multiple weddings a week, multiple marriages a week, because his whole foreign policy was based on this idea of spreading monotheism and spreading the God of Israel throughout the region and throughout the world. And so he really represents the culmination of the kingdom of Saul, the kingdom of David, and the idea of spreading that the wisdom, the Torah, God, the God of Israel, to the whole world. And so that's where I think that we can learn from the model of governance from the Bible to where we're at today. And I think that's a challenge of our generation, the opportunity for Jews and Christians to work together to spread the miracles that God is performing for us, and to stand on the rooftops and shout and then in recognition of the great miracles that God is performing for us as something that is for the whole world. And it's not just for the Jewish people, it's not just for the Christians, but it's something for the whole world to see and to recognize. And that I believe and I hope is where we have to move after October 7th, because it's something that, as the world continues to be confused with this great moral confusion that is so predominant today, and especially with young people who are less engaged with history, less aware of history. So it's really on us, on our generation, to make sure that this clarity that we learn ultimately from the Bible is something that is really required for each and every one of us to work together, both Jews and Christians, to spread the idea of God's eternal covenant with Israel, and that there is an important role for each and every one of us in this great miracle of Israel, in the great movement that we're calling Universal Zionism. And then finally, in the book, there's a lot of practical applications and lessons and things that we can do in our own lives in order to bring it into our own world, and ultimately to be able to be a part of the spreading of this message beyond. And the main thing that we're focused on at Israel 365 is the importance of Shabbat. Shabbat is something that has, there's a famous line that more than the Jews kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jews, right? If there's one thing that kept the Jewish people throughout our exile intact, it was the fact that we take a day a week dedicated to the Lord, dedicated to prayer and Bible study and time with our family. And that's something that's one of the 10 commandments. It's not only for the Jewish people. It's something that we believe that Jews and Christians honoring Shabbat, celebrating Shabbat together is a way of spreading the Universal Zionist message. And that's something that we would love all of you to be a part of and to be a part of our Shabbat project. And there's a lot of ways for you to get involved with that. So why don't I maybe take a second to stop and see if there's if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi Tuly. So, just one thing I'd like to add, and some people don't always realize this, is God could have just as easily chosen a land, put the Jews in Australia, and we could have been out in the middle, or Madagascar, and give us an island out in the middle of nowhere. But he specifically chose Israel, which was the epicenter between Asia, Africa, and Europe, in order for us to fulfill this mission. So this really is just something that's so central to God's mission of the Jewish people, and that's what you're really elaborating on as far as Zionism and universal Zionism as far as the Jewish people's role.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brother or Tuly, just one thing about the Shabbat, as the Bible students believe that we are fulfilling the Shabbat because we rest every day in the finished work of Mashiach. That we believe that the fulfillment of Shabbat is the 1,000 years of Messiah's reign over the earth. And yet there are certain scriptures that we should be looking at that sounds like there will be keeping of the seventh day in God's kingdom that's on earth. And those are, and that's something we should all consider. And of course, that book that I haven't read yet, but I plan to read, "Stop in the Name of God," I think is what it's called, and that will be a good read for everyone. So my first question, Tuly, that you touched on was October 7, the manifestation of the failure of political secular Zionism, and was it a wake-up call for this element of Israeli society to be swallowed up by religious biblical Zionism? I use that word swallow because of what happened against the rebellion against Moses when they came out of the land. And I like to also look at political secular Zionism as that time when they came out of the land, it came out of Egypt, but they didn't have the law yet, right? And so that's a good illustration of that. Over.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that October 7th was this ultimate failure that Israel suffered from so many sins of hubris and and irresponsible leadership on the one hand, but ultimately, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, and if you think about, well, what do we have to fix and what do we have to repent for and what errors do we make? So obviously, it's so simple. We divided the land. Joel 3 says that, you must never divide God's land. We did divide God's land. We gave away God's land, and we paid a bitter price for that. And only political secular leadership could have done something like that. It's hard to imagine if the people were thinking more about God's will, they would never have done such a thing. And so we paid a tremendous price for veering off course. And I think that the wake up call is that we are stewards of this land. Doesn't belong to us to be a nation like all other nations who could trade land for peace, it just doesn't work that way here. God's covenant with Israel is dependent on the covenant that God also makes with the land. So it's not ours, it's his, and we have to honor every inch of it. And that's something that when political push comes to shove is actually the big fight of our generation. And that's the big, everybody, if you were to ask people what is the big barrier to peace, so at least until the war, I think now people wouldn't even know how to answer that question. But before the war, if you would ask people what is the big barrier to peace, so the media has been drumming this steady beat that it is the settlers in the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, that is the number one obstacle to peace. And that's we see it as an entire opposite. We see the exact opposite, that the people settling the land and God's land is, in fact, the only thing that will lead to peace, both from a very pragmatic, peace through strength approach, but also because this is the piece of land that God gave to us. And he wants us to be in control of the land in order to fulfill his will there. And so, it ultimately comes down to just that, but again, not stopping there. The real, I think, test of Israel is, will we be able to expand our mission outwards in order to start thinking more about how to have an impact on the whole world, and to get the whole world to be incorporating these important values into their own observance and belief. And like right now, there's a huge fight that's happening within Christianity over basically replacement theology once again. The Catholic Church last week came out with a letter that was circulated by these churches that are based in Israel that said that Christian Zionism has no part of Christian theology. And then, of course, you have these very these social media influencers, who you might have heard of or not heard of. Hopefully you're not following people like Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, who has been such a very influential voice in America and in the mainstream of the conservative movement, is calling Christian Zionism a brain virus and saying that he hates nothing more than Christian Zionists. And, so there's a big divide that's happening over the definition of what is a Christian. Is a Christian somebody who believes that they replaced Israel, or is a Christian somebody who believes that God's covenant with Israel is eternal? So, and I think that the Jewish people need to take have more of a voice in that debate, in that argument as well, and to say that we have serious disagreements with Christians, but we ultimately can acknowledge that what we have in common is way more significant. What we have in common, we share the Bible, and we share the God of Israel, and that's something that the Jewish community needs to start embracing. And this outreach to non-Jews is something that we're spending a lot of our time at Israel 365 trying to get Jewish people to open their homes to Christians to come for a Shabbat dinner. I don't know here, maybe just take it. You could show with your hands here. Who here would be interested in going to a Jewish family for a Friday night Shabbat dinner? Okay. Who here
Joyce and I have been in your home for one.
That's right.
That was our very first Shabbat dinner in your home in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah, Paul and Joyce have been such an important part of my journey. Really, like I grew up in this sort of Jewish bubble. We didn't really interact a lot with Christians. Christians were always sort of the enemy of the Jewish people. And then I met the Lagnos, and everything changed for me. And I started to realize that we're in a new period in history, and those people who have persecuted us are now hoisting up on their shoulders and helping us return to the land of Israel. And that's something that the Jewish people are starting to get more and more comfortable with. And so we're trying to now work with those Jewish families and say, okay, you need to open up your doors as well and invite more, because just like it changed my life, I think it will change many more Jewish people's lives, and maybe encourage them to come home to Israel, and also just to recognize that we have so much in common with our Christian brothers and sisters, and we need to also recognize that we have very serious enemies that we share with our Christian brothers and sisters. They're not kidding when they say, first the Saturday people and then the Sunday people. And that's something that the Jews are too small to fight radical Islam by ourselves. But the Christians, I think, could look to the Jews as being such a role model. We're the only ones who have the guts to fight back against jihad. And we're doing it very successfully. We need your support, but it's something that together we can fight and win against radical Islam, and to be victorious in the name of Judeo-Christian values.
Tuly, I'm going to start with a young person that's online with us, and then I'll go back to the old people's question. But he says, what's a good dialogue to start, or a general response to someone who begins ranting about how the Jews and Israel as a whole control the American government, the media, the entertainment? This is something I've had coworkers and people my age bring up without even remotely being on the topic. And on that same thing, we are going to a birthday party this afternoon where two of my nieces are in that category. Go ahead, Tuly.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and it's a question that a lot of young people are grappling with. So thank you for asking that. It's a question that you'll hear from people out of ignorance. They really either they believe it because they don't know any better, or they're just an anti-Semite. But let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't even know any better. So it's very easy to debunk that question with the facts. If you think that the Jews control, say you think that the Jews control America, and in fact, like Joe Rogan, he's another podcaster you might have heard of. So he had a guy on last week, Gad Saad, who asked, Joe Rogan asked the same question. The Jews are controlling all of America, and controlling geopolitics in order to benefit Israel, like dragging America into this war to attack Iran. So he said, let me ask you, Joe, how many Jews do you think are in the world? And he said, I don't know. He said, well, if you'll take a guess. He said 500 million. Okay. And he said, there are 15 million Jews in the world. There's about 7.5 million Jews in Israel and about 7.5 million Jews in America. That is a rounding error. We're 0.2% or 0.02% of the world's population. We're not controlling anything. we're lucky if we're not even controlling the Knesset. I mean, Israel can't even do what it wants to do in our own country because we're not calling the shots over here. America, and I'm a big fan of of President Trump, but America just appointed Pakistan, Qatar, Turkey, Russia onto the board of peace in Gaza. We're not controlling anything. So it's, I think, a question that needs, you just have you have to learn the fact and then be able to share the facts. Because we're not in control. God's in control. Israel is very strong, but that's because we worked very hard for our country, and we're not going anywhere.
And I would say, David, link them to there's some great movies out there. Israel Appointment with Destiny is a good movie but there's lots of historical movies that show the miracles that only God could have done for that nation, especially since 1948. Um, so this is
Just
Paul.
Paul, before the next question, Tuly, what's your timing? I just want to be sensitive towards you. I know you had some other things tonight, so I just want to know how many more questions that we should.
I think I have 10 more minutes.
Okay, wonderful.
My very close friend is making a bar mitzvah for his son, and it started a half an hour ago.
Uh-oh.
So, and
You've got to make a showing there.
and Paul knows about bar mitzvahs that you can't come late. So, otherwise, anyways, but so maybe 10 more minutes.
Okay, wonderful.
So,
So Paul, let's pick out, one or two of the
well, this
final
is an
questions.
important question. It's by Paul Mesra, and it goes back to uh, our heritage. Our heritage goes back to 1876. As Bible students, we are probably the oldest group still in existence that started to encourage Jews to go back to the land in 1876 before Herzl.
Yeah.
Bible students were encouraging, letting Jews know that God gave them the land and they should go back to it. And Ken Rawson is the most recent significant contribution to the Bible students. And as a result of uh, Pastor Russell, Charles Russell's work before Herzl, a lot of Christians now have adopted the dual covenant and theory, and they don't try to proselytize Jews anymore, which is great. And so the question is about the Russian Jews. And Ken Rawson, before he introduced his movie to hundreds of thousands of people, he would talk about his experience with Rabin in 1991. He spent an hour with Rabin, and Rabin laughed at him because Rawson said that there would be 1 million Jews that would immigrate in the 1990s. And Rabin said no more than 300,000 will come. But then about 3 months after he met with Rabin, Rabin gave a talk in his campaign, and he said there will be 1 million Jews coming back, and both he and Rawson were right. So the question is, do you consider the date 1989? How do you consider that for anything in prophecy or anything about the Russian Jews that came back?
19. So, look, the Russian Jewish Aliyah is something that is like a huge miracle that, it doesn't surprise me that Rabin didn't recognize it because, again, he wasn't looking at the world from a biblical perspective. But a huge miracle that 1 million Jews left the Iron Curtain where they were unable to practice their Judaism for 100 years and maintain their faith and then return to Israel. And then not only return to Israel, you have this refugee community that 1 million refugees basically came, and then they turned Israel into a superpower. They turned Israel into a superpower with their, because the Jews who were living in Russia were persecuted tremendously, and there was a terrible amount of anti-Semitism. And even though they weren't allowed to be practicing as Jews, they were still identified as Jews, and so they were unable to get promotions unless they were literally not a little bit better, 10 times better than everybody else at work. So you had all of these like very, very hardworking, very smart, persecuted Jews in Russia, and who in just a very short amount of time came to Israel and turned the whole country into this technological superpower. And God used that at the right time, like in the 80s and in the 90s, for Israel to be in a position where it could defend itself against its enemies in a very hostile area. So, again, every one of these steps along the way, which are coming out of nowhere, we didn't see them coming. Even the Prime Minister of Israel doesn't see it coming, but God's ways are not our ways, and he, in his perfect timing, sets things up for Israel and for the next all of the phases to happen for the Messiah to arrive. And we are eagerly awaiting for the Mashiach to come, and that's something that we feel is imminent. Every time when I do travel to America, so my kids are like, "How could he leave?" And I was like, "Oh, that's so sweet. They don't want me to leave," but they don't want me to leave because they're afraid that I'm going to miss the arrival of the Mashiach and that the Messiah is going to come, and I'm going to be stuck in Chicago with Paul and Joyce, and then I'm going to miss all of the fun in Jerusalem.
You have very, very sensitive children, Tuly.
I mean, the kids today are certainly running the show, and I think that is we're just following their lead in this this time of redemption. Rabbi Tuly, just any kind of closing thoughts or ideas, or Paul, if there's one final question. I think we have one final question. I'll stick around for a few extra minutes. I have just an idea I want to share and just kind of some housekeeping things. So after Rabbi Tuly has to go, I'll stay on for a few more minutes, and then we'll call it a day.
And just for anybody that wants to go to Israel this year, please stick around after this meeting, and we'll have a little discussion about where the tour for Israel this year is going.
And if I could just say thank you for Paul, especially for lining this up. I know that you thought it was important to share the message of Universal Zionism. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I understand that many of you purchased a book. I saw that. Oh, look at that! Keith has a copy, and I saw Paul and Jan have a copy. Shirley has a copy. That's amazing. So thank you all for being so supportive. If you have any questions about the book, email me. And if you don't have a copy yet, go to universal-zionism.com and get yourself a copy. I think it's, it's just the beginning of a conversation. It's not the final word, but it's the beginning of a conversation that I look forward to continuing. You are all invited to spend Shabbat with us with Israel 365, with myself and Rabbi Rami in Nashville in about a month. I think maybe 3 weeks. Nashville, it's the weekend of February 20th and 21.
I just put a link in the notes. Anyone who wants to come sign up and join us for Shabbat, it's going to be a real wow. I mean,
yeah. And it's something that we need your help. We need your help to get the word out to more people and to be a part of this great miracle that God is performing in the world today. So thank you again. And Rabbi Rami, thank you for hosting, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Shavua Tov.
Mazal Tov. Congratulations on the bar mitzvah. Enjoy.
Okay, bye everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so a couple of housekeeping notes, and then I'd love to share a teaching which I think is really important. All of our work is done in support of people and our friends like Paul, supporting our work. So I am putting a link to our Israel 365 action, and this is really where we push forward. We're not just sitting back saying, okay, redemption's going to come, but what are we doing about the redemption? How are we actively getting people to make Aliyah? How are we supporting widows and orphans? How are we going forward and making sure that our soldiers are taken care of? And everything that we do is really as a result of the support of our friends around the world, both Jews and Christians, who come together to help support our work. So please help us in that regard. Any donation, large or small, is a blessing to the people of Israel, a blessing to the land of Israel, and blessing to Rabbi Tuly. He lets me come to work every day. Thankfully, he lets me show up and to spend time with the team. is really just such a blessing. But any amount would really be helpful.
There's
So I'd like
something
to.
too, Rami, that I don't think we got the links to yet, and that is Bible Plus.
Okay.
I think it's what is it, $5 a month or something?
Um,
For
Something along that line. Bible Plus. Where to go? Here we
Bible
go.
Plus. I
Yeah.
plan to get into that, especially the section on Universal Zionism. Um,
Okay.
and
So the
so,
first one's for, well, we have the Shabbat link, we have action to donate, and then the Bible Plus. Bible Plus has on-demand classes where where we cover really every topic. Rabbi Tuly actually has a 3-part series on Bible Plus that's there, and I think we're trying to get it for this group as a freebie. I have to find out how we go ahead and how we do that. But that is something that we are we're looking forward to you guys continuing to study with us. So Paul, any other things, and then I'll share an idea, and then we'll call it a day. At least for this part, I know you have people who want to stay on to come, but the idea in this week's portion, actually, Moses said that he's going to bring the destruction of the firstborn. He's going to bring it Vayihi b'chatzi halayla, and it was in the middle of the night. That phrase, and one thing that as Bible students, there are different phrases that come up. So when you're dealing with Hebrew, and the written Bible as we have it in Hebrew is something that goes back to Mount Sinai, the exact way that things are written in Hebrew. Was it translated into Greek and then English or whatever? So those things, they get a little bit fuzzy. But when you go back to the original Hebrew, the words that are used in one place act as a hyperlink to another place. And the phrase, Vayihi b'chatzi halayla, and it was in the middle of the night, that exact phrase appears twice in the entirety of the Bible, of the Hebrew Bible. And it was in the middle of the night. Where were these two in that exact phraseology? It's one here. Why? It's the destruction of the firstborn. It is the redemption from Egypt. Anyone want to venture a guess where it comes up? And it was in the middle of the night. I'll give you guys. Anyone could write in the notes. Where else do we have something in Paul? Paul, I feel like I should give out like a prize if Paul gets this. Like he's on stage right now. But where is it? And it was in the middle of the night that appears in any takers on this. I'll give 10 more seconds. You could write in the notes, or Paul, if you want to venture a guess, you have the mic.
It would be a big guess. I don't know, brethren. Come on, David.
Okay, here we go. I won't put you on the spot for
appear?
too long. And it was in the middle of the night. And this, by the way, I gave over this idea in Bible Plus as well. But what was in the middle of the night? It was when Ruth comes to uncover the feet of Boaz. And it was in the middle of the night. Okay, what's the connection between these two stories? One is talking about the death of the firstborn, the leaving of Egypt. And one is talking about Ruth coming in the middle of the night, very quietly, surreptitiously uncovering the feet of Boaz. And Boaz turns to her, and instead of yelling curses at her, he ever so gently says, "Don't worry about it, I'll take care of it." And as Robin correctly pointed out, what does the two have in common? It's redemption. It is the night of redemption. And sometimes we have redemption that comes with fire and lightning and thunder and leaving of Egypt. And sometimes redemption is just a small conversation between two people. Sometimes it's a single thing that happens. Think about it. What would have happened had Boaz turned around and turned to Ruth and said, "You harlot, you prostitute, get out of here. Who are you? You're a Moabite woman. You came to the nation of Israel to defile the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, and me as one of their leaders. Get out of here." She comes in the middle of the night. What is she doing? And instead of coming in the middle of the night, and instead of him yelling and cursing her out, he recognizes, you know what? When she says, you are the Redeemer, she says to Boaz, you are the Redeemer. And she points a finger at him. And he says, because he says, you are the Redeemer, says, she says, you are the Redeemer. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fix this. We're going to figure it out. So it was at that point. So sometimes we don't know how this redemption is going to happen. And we don't know if it's going to be lightning and thunder, and it's going to be the temple falling from heaven, or it's going to be sitting there stone by stone. We don't know if it's going to be a redemption of steps forwards and step backwards. I mean, clearly it seems that that's the direction that it's going in. And we have these miracles, but all too often what ends up happening when you have miracles is we say, oh, they're not really miracles. Oh, the army did it. The United States came in to help. No, but these are all part of the redemption. And the redemption is, as Rabbi Tuly is envisioning what is Universal Zionism, but we have to realize that the redemption has multiple different paths, and God has different ways that he could lead the world over to redemption. And it might be through thunder and lightning, or it might be something that's small and narrow. And that's something, and obviously that union leads ultimately to King David, which leads to the redemption of the people and Mashiach. Please God, it should be speedily in our days. So this is just an idea that I wanted to share. And like I said, we're doing the small little bits of work each and every day, and we can't do it alone. We're unable to do it alone. We're doing it. We have our friends like Paul and all of you and all the Pauls that are here tonight, all the Paul Lagnos, right? We have dozens of them. But if we each do our little piece, one by one, step by step, we will see this redemption happen. And every bit of us coming together, every word of Bible, of Torah that we study together, and that we move forward together, and we love and embrace each other, support each other in any way that we're able to, I think brings the redemption that much closer. So these are just one small idea I wanted to share.
I love it. I think, now this is just not studied opinion, but I think Ruth could represent the Christian Zionists around the world that are finally uncovering the truth about Israel. And millions and millions. I was, as a lot of brethren know, I was in Israel with you, viewing the 1,000 evangelicals that came, and it was an unbelievable spectacle. And Rami, I have a question. What impact do you think that had, especially on any secular Jews? How do you think that the Christian Zionists are having any type of religious impact on secularism in Israel?
Very difficult to answer, because you're asking me to evaluate the Ruth, as opposed to the big events are much easier. We do know that the land of Israel is trending towards becoming more religious and more faithful over time. More than 50% of kids in kindergarten are going to religious schools, are Shabbat observant, and that's a trend that will continue. A lot of the fight that we saw pre-October 7th with regard to the judicial reforms is really because the, kind of that old model that Rabbi Tuly was talking about, the King Saul model, is slowly slipping away. And there is we know even King Saul went crazy at the end when he sees David start to rise to power, and he tries to kill him. I mean, it's a crazy thing to think. Saul was a righteous person. He's not a religious leader per se, but he's a religious person himself. And here he is trying to kill David. That's a crazy thing. And that's what we're seeing. So it's like, on the big picture, the country is moving in the right direction. How each of us play that individual role, I think, is always always very difficult for us to really identify. Only in hindsight that we're able to say. There's actually a statement of the rabbis which they say about three different characters, but we'll take Reuben, that had Reuben known that it was going to be written about him, that he came back and he tried to save Joseph, right? He comes back to the pit. He throws him into the pit and says, don't kill him, right? Reuben ultimately saved Joseph's life. But had Reuben known what was going to be written about him, you know what he would have done? He would have taken Joseph on his shoulders and danced him back to Jacob and he said, Jacob, I just saved Joseph. And he would have turned the whole thing on its head. Obviously, the whole story wouldn't have unfolded the way that it did. But the point that the rabbis are trying to make, they're not making a literal point, but they're making a point of what happens within our lives. That as this new chapter of the Bible is being written about us, about this connection that we are having, how are we approaching it? Are we approaching it by taking Joseph on our shoulders and dancing back to our father Jacob? Or are we saying, nah, history will just happen? Are we being active about it, or are we just being very passive and we're just gonna sit back? So I think, in terms of the impact, always very difficult. The impact is happening. And I think each of us, in each step that we take, each trip that we make to Israel, each donation that we take, each prayer that we say, each Bible that we study, all makes a greater impact in what's happening. So, sometimes we really want to feel that we're the one who made the impact, but we never know. I'll tell you one other story, and I'm sorry I'm hogging the microphone here a little bit, but someone came over to me. I was in the shopping center a couple of months back, and he came over to me and he said, Rami, I want to thank you so much. The program that happened last night was amazing. I had no idea what he was talking about. I was like, what program? What are you talking about? He said, well, we actually had a program last night, and we had, 50 women came out for this thing, and they were studying. I don't even know what happened, but he said, you had introduced me to this other woman, we'll call her Sarah. You introduced me to Sarah, and because I got together with Sarah, we came up with this whole new idea, and it was just something that was, we had an amazing event. And I sat there and I was like, amazing. I mean, so to a certain extent, I'm going to get to heaven and God's going to say, that was a great program, all because of you. But I didn't even know that I did anything. Now, the problem is, Paul, and you know this, right? I'm sure many bad things that have happened over the years that God is going to turn back and be like, that was because of you also. But okay, we'll worry about that later. But in the meantime, to try to go ahead and to always do better, we really never know what kind of impact. We just have to go ahead and try and do our best, as things go. So that's what I would say in terms of having the impact. Do the right things and let the result be up to God.
Amen. Well, brethren, we're going to let Rami go. I want to show you something, though, before he goes. Let's see if I can make it happen. So if you come to Israel, Lord willing, we would visit this place. Tell me if this comes up.
Sharing a screen.
Is
nice.
It up? Okay, so they have this Taj Mahal office. It's absolutely beautiful. There's Rami. This is Rabbi Eli. This is Rabbi Tuly. Who is this?
That's Rabbi Mark. Rabbi Mark is our doing pastor outreach, and he's also doing setting up our Nashville office. He runs our tours.
Oh, okay.
So, yes, Rabbi Mark is.
And he's from Australia, isn't he?
He's from England.
England, okay.
England, yeah.
And then this is Robbie Frolinger, who's the guy that's running the place now, right?
Yeah, he is our CEO, and he's a really wonderful person. And just a little bit about my background. I come from the business world, and when I was building up my business, Robbie was my business consultant. And he really comes with a financial mind because he wants, and he makes sure that every penny that comes into the organization, he makes sure that is not just wasted. There's a lot of organizations, unfortunately, a lot of nonprofits that, hey, we have money, let's go ahead and spend it on all sorts of other things. And it is something that he really keeps things running as a business. This is not just as a passion and a business to make sure that no money is really wasted on anything that we do. So, but yeah, so it's a real pleasure to work for him.
We met this woman at your office, and she came with us the next day up on the Temple Mount.
Oh yeah,
with Abe Truitt, Joyce and I, and we went the Jewish route on the Temple Mount, which was absolutely incredible. I'll show that after and her name is Trina, and her husband was Jewish, and she plans to make Aliyah this year. I guess you wouldn't call it Aliyah, but she's eligible.
Well, she actually made Aliyah, and then ended up having to go back because her father was sick.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it's been a real pleasure.
So we're still in touch with her. So just tell us about these two offices here.
So this office is many of our wonderful, the women in the office, they sit there, and they're doing, we have Sarah over here, which I don't know if you could see that I'm pointing. She's the first one on the left-hand side. She runs our Bible Plus and is one of our fantastic writers. She writes for our daily inspiration, news articles, and the like. The next one next to her is Yudit. Yudit is our graphic designer, so any graphics that you see coming out of Israel 365 is as a result of her. The next woman is Talia Eisen. She runs our collaboration with some of the other nonprofits that we work with to help with advertising and the like. And then we have Shira. Shira is one of the editors helping Rabbi Tuly, editors of the Israel Bible. She's also one of our writers. She does a tremendous amount of content. She's one of the teachers on Bible Plus. Really a fantastic and talented woman. And then over here you have Rabbi Pesach. You could see him filming. Anyone who doesn't follow Rabbi Pesach, it's on the Israel 365 YouTube channel, and he puts out three times a week an analysis of what's going on in Israel. Just did a whole 6-part series on how Israel has become a regional superpower and the steps that we are taking to become a superpower rather than waiting on others, but we are actually taking steps to be a playmaker. And part of that, he explains what happened in Somaliland. So I highly recommend you checking that out. And then his partner in crime, Aaron, the guy behind the scenes who makes sure that everything looks fantastic. Just a little bit about myself. I also run prayer calls. We're actually having a prayer call tomorrow afternoon for anyone who is able to make it. It'll be afternoon for you. It'll be evening for me. And so we will be praying about the future of Christian Zionism, some of our young people. So I will actually throw a registration link over here for anyone who wants to join us, is able to join us tomorrow.
Very good. How many do you expect on that call?
So as of right now, there's going to be something sent out tomorrow. It'll probably go up. We have 248 people registered for that.
Wow.
So we are expecting a nice group for tomorrow. It's really critical that we connect with young Christian leaders, which is one of the projects that we have going on. So that we'll be hearing from some of our young leaders and seeing them in action, and taking it from there. But yeah, we're living in unbelievable times right now. biblical times and times where we need to go ahead and to work together as much as possible. And these are some of Paul's his trip. So I will send this out all in an email. I have all of your email addresses. I'll send a recording of this as well as these links, so anyone could connect there, and then you'll have my email address. Be able to join me, and if you have any further questions, please feel free. So, thank you, everyone.
Very good. Thank you, Rami, and Lord bless you.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yes, go ahead.
Short question for Rami. Will what you're sending out include the donation link?
Yes, I can include it there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
And
good.
what is the
And,
Plus
the
website?
Plus-
Oh, it's over here. I'll put it again.
Yeah, the Plus is only $5 a month, and you get really great biblical resources. From a Jewish perspective, of course, but that's the Bible students are accused many times. I'm asked all the time when I'm with people that know me. They say, "Are you Jewish?" Because we have such a Jewish perspective, and so.
And you just tell them, no, my name is Paul. Like, so,
I don't know. Joyce, what did you just say? Okay.
Wonderful.
Robin, where are you from? Your name sounds so familiar.
We know her from the park, Paul.
Oklahoma City. Oh, that's how I know
That's
Robin.
Robin.
That's Robin. Hi, Robin.
Very
Hi,
good.
Paul and Joyce. Good to reconnect with you. Thanks.
Yeah, it's nice to see you.
Thank you. Okay, so Paul, I'm going to sign off, and you can go ahead and
Okay, any
continue your
brethren
meeting.
that want to hear what's going on with tours, stick around. Hopefully our link will still be viable.